Hey guys, so I'm gonna have a little chat about rebuilding a 12 valve. I get this question quite often, so I thought I'd just kind of go through it. Now, take in consideration, it depends on where you guys are demographically, parts prices, exchange rates. For us in Canada, we kind of get screwed on parts, so is what it is. And then our exchange rate and stuff. Machining costs are higher here versus somewhere else, or vice versa. So just take that. There is a bit of a range there, but just to give you guys an idea and what it takes to go into it and to do it properly. Because you can go in and rebuild an engine and not what I would classify as properly rebuild it, and you can get away with it lots of times. But just one of those. I'm talking about a rebuilt 12 valve, and I just realized that I spelled something wrong. Good thing I'm not a teacher. Don't worry, I'll fix it. Fix it before you guys see it. I probably spelled stuff wrong anyway, but so I kind of wrote it out here on the board. So let me get away from this a little bit. I wrote this all out just so I didn't want to get too carried away with how long it was going to take to talk about everything. But let me need a pointer here, just so it's easier. So we got a screwdriver for a pointer. So going into rebuilding a 12 valve. Now, going through, depending on who's doing it for you, what they have to do, there is a range on stuff for pricing. So, take some of it might be high, some of it might be low on your engine. So I'm just going to start from the top, work my way down to the bottom. Now, rebuilding the cylinder head, depending on what's wrong with the cylinder head. Now, if the cylinder head's cracked and can't be reused, obviously you'll have to replace it. You can replace it for in the $1,000, like I would say under $1,300, whether you're Canadian or you're in the US, you can replace it for that. I sell a brand new casting with 60-pound valve springs in it for $1,250 Canadian is what I sell them for. Now, going through the rebuild side of things, depending on what you have to do, but I always cut the seats, grind the valves, they always get guided. I don't do knurling or any of that stuff. So base price on that, you're $650 and then up to $1,150 depending on what you're doing. Now, if I'm doing a complete rebuild with doing 60-pound valve springs and all of that stuff, you're around the $1,150 to $1,250 range, depending on again, what I have to do. But that gives you a general idea, right? So $650 to $1,150. Now, doing the block side of things, there again, depending on what's wrong, but you have to go in and pull the oil gallery plugs out, you have to wash it, you have to magnaflux it, you have to pressure test it. You don't always have to pressure test them because they're not bad for cracking. Most of the time that we do pressure test them, unless if it was just wore out, lots of times we won't pressure test them, we just magnaflux them. But it just depends on what the deal is, because usually we'll have some sort of an idea what was wrong. But then you're going to go into it, bore and hone it, and surface it. So bore and hone, I charge $65 per cylinder to bore and hone it. And then we torque plate hone it. So there's time re-and-reing that. Surface, we're $150, and then you have your check and your clean. So it works out to, for us, it's $860. So now onto the crankshaft side of things. If you're just polishing it, I charge $150 for a polish, so clean and polish. Now, I didn't spell crank wrong, but it should have been grind. For us, it cost me $400 to have a crankshaft ground. Now, it might be cheaper for you guys, but just to give you a general idea, right? Camshaft, if you can regrind the camshaft, we're $250 for a regrind, and if you have to go into a new, they can grind you up to $1,000. Now, I can buy a new camshaft for much less than $1,000, but that would be going into like a Hamilton or a Colt or something like that. You're into that $1,000 range. So that's why I went to $1,000. So it could range from $250 to $1,000, right? Tappet side of things, new. I guess I didn't put a price in there for new ones. I think we're around $300 Canadian for new ones. So I'll give you a range there anyways. So $75 to $300 for whether you're grinding or new. And that just, like I said, gives you a general idea. Now rods, on the rod side of things, reman on the rods, you don't always have to do it, but so you potentially could be $0 as long as the bushings are good. But if you're getting into you know, checking and replacing bushings, and then you have to do the boring on the bushing, you're $390 to rebuild the rods as long as they're rebuildable. So I guess I should do a range on that, because even for the check, there is, you know, charge for a check, right? We charge $125 for a check and polished bushing, up to $390. So push rods, there again, you could be from 0 to 285. That's going to a heavy duty push rod. And then rockers. The rockers, you guys have seen me, I've shown you how they gall up and stuff. So if we're just tearing them apart, which we always tear them apart to check, we hone them. If they need to be replaced, you know, it's $100 for us to tear them apart and clean and hone them. And then if you have to replace, you can be up to $450. So now on to, if you're O-ringing and studding the head, now that you don't, you know, this stuff you don't have to per se do. Just, I put it on here. But anyways, so for me to O-ring the head, you're $390. Actually, I just wrote 400. Studs, you know, that's gonna, there again, range if you buy like an exotic head stud or you know, any of the other guys, or if you go into an ARP, that's that rough idea. For us, they're actually more than that for us. I think they're like around $700 Canadian, so just give or take a little bit. Valve springs, you're 100 to 650. Personally, I don't ever use stock valve springs myself, but you know, to each his own. But you know, a set of 60-pound valve springs, good ones are about 100, and then you can range up to the 650 range for a valve, you know, you go into a conical or something like that. Depending, there again, depending on what you're running, right? Oil pump, I always replace the oil pump. You're $150 for an oil pump. Now onto the pistons and bearings, and I know you guys, some of you guys are going to be like, oh, that's way too much money, but I'm talking there again in Canadian, and trying to keep Canadian and US dollars in mind. But you get into doing it, you know, unless you're buying what I classify as a junk kit, you can buy it cheaper than that. But you know, I don't know, I like doing it once, not twice. So Mala, I usually use Mala stuff, or I use Cummins stuff depending on what I'm buying. But for the most part, you know, Mala, even Seal Power, actually, their stuff isn't too bad. I've used some of their stuff, and then same with Felpro actually has pretty good pistons and stuff too. But I use Mala because they're easy for me to get. I've never had an issue, so that's what I use. And then hat style valve seals. Now, when I rebuild a head, I always cut them for hat style valve seals. I just put the price here, just, you know, just in case. Now the head does need to be machined for that, but that should range in that part. So this price also does not have valve springs in it. So if this price, you would be plus your valve springs, so you'd be the $1250, right? But anyways, now taking consideration, you bring a guy a long block. So long block is going to be no injection system, no turbo, no oil pan, depending on the place. Personally, for me, it's not, but we'll explain that in a few minutes. But you're going to have to disassemble. So your disassembly fee, you're going to be, for most guys, you're going to be between $300 and $600, depending on how much they have to pull off. And then the assembly, same idea, depending on how far you're going into the engine. You know, in checking clearances, we always check all the clearances when we're doing it. So you're between $600 and $1,000. So now if you go in there, high range on everything, you could be like $9,500. Now that's going high range on everything. And then if you go low range on everything, you could be downwards of, you know, $4,300. So take this in, you know, with the pricing. Some of this is Canadian pricing, some of it's US pricing, so that is going to vary. But I would say your range is probably going to be between $4,000 and $9,000. Now, when I'm rebuilding what I classify as a stock long block for a 12 valve, we're $5,400 Canadian to do that. Now, that is stock head bolts, 60-pound valve springs, us going through everything. And then that's plus core too, right? So if I need a good rebuildable core in return, I charge $1,500 for a core. So that's, you know, take that into consideration. Now that's not including, you know, if you have a bad block or if your crankshaft is no good, the rods are junk, that type of stuff, right? So that gives you an idea. Now, take consideration, a long block does not come with a water pump, from me anyway. Doesn't come with a water pump. It does not come with an oil cooler. It does not come with new injectors. Does not come with an injection pump, and does not come with a lift pump. This is stuff that I would recommend changing. Most of it, the injection pump, the injectors for sure. Injection pump, I recommend to have it at least looked over, which is, you know, kind of the 750 is a wellness check and a check over kind of idea. And then always replace a water pump, always replace the oil cooler myself. Now, so if you add this into that price, let's just add it up quick here. So your base range on that is going to be 1625 to 100, 250, 1,000, 2,500. So depending on the injectors, obviously, of what you're doing, right? But that gives you an idea. You know, if you're going through all this, and this isn't going to be a crazy engine by any stretch of the imagination, but, you know, it could be upwards depending on what's wrong with the pump. You know, if you have a plunger issue and you have to replace plungers, or you have to get into the govern and change a bunch of that stuff adds up real quick. So, you know, you can be into real easy, you know, that $9,500 can go, you know, you add another $4 grand to that. Whoop, as I put permanent marker on my sheet here. Don't use permanent marker on board. Doesn't work. Doesn't come off easy. So, you know, like it can turn into a $13,000 build really fast, depending on, and like I said, that's going on big end of injectors. And, you know, I realize lots of guys, but, you know, you could add real easy, add a couple $1,000s, you know, when you do an injection pump and injectors, real easy. So just take that in mind when you guys are having, you know, if you're bringing an engine in to have it rebuilt, sometimes it can snowball really easy, depending on what's wrong and what the cores are like and all that type of stuff. So now what I did want to talk about was going through, so what it would cost, the engine that we just put together, this P-Pump 12 valve, what it's going to cost to build that engine. Okay, so I just reworked the board here. So this is what I got going on in this one. Now, taking consideration with the price and the pump and all that jazz, that when a shop is building a complete engine or a long block, there will be a cost, because I build a cost in there for warranty. In case something goes wrong, that type of thing. There's missing pieces out of the gasket because nobody reimburses the shop for that. They just get screwed out of that. So just take that into consideration. Would be building the engine with like a base warranty, which would be probably from most shops would be a 1 year, 20,000 kilometer warranty. Now, if you have the warranty that I give when we're rebuilding an engine, but does have a built-in warranty cost, you are 160,000 kilometers or 5 years. But like I said, there's stuff to that. There's a little bit more to it, in depth in it. So I'm just showing you guys, if you guys were to bring an engine, get a base warranty with it, this is what this engine would cost you to build. So, you know, going through it, knowing exactly what we did to it. So we had the cylinder head. I did a complete job on the cylinder head. The block, we bored and honed the block, surfaced, blah, 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 all that stuff, checked everything. Oh, I did put a cam bearing in there, what I didn't add, but we'll just say whatever for the cam bearing. But so you could actually add another 100 on for the cam bearing in the install, but polish the crankshaft because we didn't have to grind. Tappets regrind. The rods was just to check over, polish the bushings because they were okay. The push rods were used, so there's no cost on that. The rockers, we did have to machine the rockers for the studs and check them out and clean them, so $250 for that. O-ring the head, $390. Your studs, because we use the exotic head studs, it was only $350. So they were relatively cheap, but hopefully they're good. I think they should be, all the testing and all that stuff, but we'll see. Only time will tell. Valve springs are $100, your oil pump $150, your engine kit, being the stuff that I used for this engine kit, worked out to about $1,250. The hat style valve seals were $45. The disassembly took me 4 hours, so you're $400 for that, which actually should be more because we charge $125, but just to give you guys a general idea. And the assembly to where it is now with setting timing and all that jazz, you'd be $1,200 for assembly. Then injectors, you're $600. The injection pump was $1,750. Now this is what it cost me to have it rebuilt. So you take in consideration, I am a shop, so I get a bit of a deal, which, you know, I have to tack some on there for my time, you know, sending it and dealing with it and blah, blah, blah. So take in consideration, this is what I paid for some of this stuff. Your water pump was $100, your oil cooler was $250, and then the lift pump was $125 with the spring and, you know, basically the time to do it. Now, so that adds up to $9,385, and now is plus cores. So if you were to buy this, you would have to bring somebody this engine with all the cores being good. You would be roughly that price. That's what it would cost. For me to build that engine, that's where you would be. Now that would be with a base warranty of 1 year, 20,000 kilometers, which most shops have a base warranty of some sort, just basically a workmanship warranty. And that's what this engine would cost to put together, or cost to put together. I shouldn't say would cost. That's what this one cost to put together. So that gives you guys a general idea. I just, you know, I kind of wanted to touch base because I've had a few guys ask about it. You know, you see them for sale, then you're, you know, rebuilt for $2,500. You're getting screwed. That's all there is to it. I don't care who you are, who's doing it. You know, there's time involved. There's a lot of time involved. Like you guys seen the videos. There's a lot of time involved going through an engine, measuring stuff. Now, if you go through it, don't measure nothing, don't check nothing, run a dingle ball home through it and hammer down, you know, obviously then whatever. You know, but to me, that's not a rebuild. You know, unless you have the bores are perfect and there's no taper in it. But not too often. You measure with a good dial bore gauge and you measure them. There is wear, there's taper. You know, can you get away with not doing it? Sure you can, but I personally won't do it that way. It's just not the way I do things. So anyways, that's the gist of this one. I just wanted to go through it, you know, to see roughly what it was cost. So this engine, if this was your engine and we built it with a 1 year base warranty, 20,000 kilometers, which would be what, 15,000 miles ish, just going off the top of my head. That's roughly what you would be price wise. Now this is basically a Canadian price, but some of the prices I've kind of fudged around so that it's close to, you'd be Canadian, US, very close to, let's say between 10 to 15%, I would say ish. So anyways, like, subscribe, hit me down in the comments. I appreciate the Patreons. Anybody that wants to do that for the free content, there will be more content over there. I do appreciate it. There is a link down below. I will be mentioning it probably a couple times, or I'm not going to mention it every video, but I will be mentioning it. You know, for the guys that are interested, for helping me out to continue bringing the content how I have been, and portray the you know, help me with the channel moving forwards. Anyways, I appreciate it. Catch you on the next one.